On average, when you swipe your card in the United States, 36 computers are involved in the process for one credit card swipe. So when people ask me what I do, so I've had some people recently going, "You're just so obsessed with voting." I go, "No, actually, I just spend a few hours a month on voting. Really, generally every 2 years in November, I predict how to steal the election and then laugh about I'm usually right. This is what I spend my time doing, because all of these things in between, every single step in this process, I have found thieves in. Every single one. In Phuket, Thailand, we blew out engineers who had an optical switch who were duplicating things. Just last month, we blew out a gang who had put extra circuit boards inside of this to steal them right at a bunch of stores in Belgium and London. A few months before that, we blew out a group that had compromised cash registers. We've blown out employees who are copying this data. We've blown out people who are working at the bank who added code to steal it there. It's like, there is no part of this system that we have not found thieves stealing or changing data. None. And it amounts to millions of dollars a day that we lose. Now, all around the world, there are thousands of qualified, highly driven, and very good professionals like myself trying really hard to allow your credit card to work. And most days, we win. And occasionally, now, let's go even to the next step, right? So now let's take what we do to stop a thief. So if we're trying to stop a thief, so I've made my credit card charge here, and now my credit card charge is traveling through the system, going through 36 computers. That goes very fast here because it's the speed of light. Then we're back into copper here. Now let's all of a sudden, this computer that asks, "Are you real?" then says, "Huh." And the computer equivalent of "huh" would be, it asks you real, well, that's a real account, but Bob Smith's never been to the Walmart in Oklahoma before. So the "huh" of the computer then triggers a whole other bunch of computers. And these computers are what I spend most of my time designing. And these are fraud detection computers. So now let's say you live in Long Island, and someone has stolen your credit card and sold it to a guy who's made a white card copy. He's taken an old hotel key like this. This is actually a hotel key that's been converted into a credit card by a thief. So this is called a 3-track mag code. And he stole the data, used an encoder that he probably bought on eBay for $50, and turned what looks like a Hyatt or, Westin key in his pocket, but this is actually a phony credit card now. He's run the phony credit card, we call this a white card fraud, through a machine, hoping to get away with a single charge. Hoping that this computer won't say, "huh," but will say, okay, that could be risky. If they see 2 or 3 "huhs" in a row, they'll definitely say something. And sometimes on the first "huh," they're like, okay, there's something odd going on. The person's on a business trip or something. We won't bother them. The computer doesn't make a decision, but the programmer has to make a decision about this. But if the computer says "huh," then all of a sudden my computers come into play. And my computers then say, what is the person's buying pattern? What is the person's age? Where's this person doing? This is definitely out of program. And then what happens is you're sitting there and your phone rings. You're in Long Island, your phone rings, you go, "Hello," and there's a nice person on the phone. And by the way, now this data has gone from Oklahoma through to your bank in Long Island into one of several farms where our fraud computers are, who've now sent a signal with some of the information to South Dakota. And now we're over in South Dakota at a fraud call center, where there's some in Ohio as well. People with nice Midwestern voice gets on the phone and goes, "Hello, Mr. Smith. This is your credit card company." And they're not from the credit card company. They're from the fraud outsource company. But they know what credit card is and know what name to say. And they have a script. I said, "Are you standing in the Walmart in Oklahoma City buying?" And if you go, "Yes, I am," they go, "Well, that's wonderful." And they click yes. Now a human decision about fraud has been made. And if you go, "No, I'm in Long Island," they go, "No." And then this cashier then has their manager come over and we try and arrest the guy. Right? Who's doing that with voting machines? Nobody. If anyone is in this process, and trust me, there are people who want to be in this process. If anyone's willing to spend $1 billion on a 2-year campaign to win an election, spending a couple $1,000,000 to intercept the system and change the vote, you bet they're willing to spend a couple $1,000,000 to do it. Nobody's building these kind of systems to protect your vote. Nobody. So what a man in the middle is precisely that introduction. That's a white card charge, but these other things I've talked about, let's talk about the Phuket blowout we had. So this group in Thailand, very clever, had basically added a computer right here called a MIM, a man in the middle, and sometimes they're called kingpins. They're a kingpin if they also send out controls. They're generally just called a man in the middle if they intercept information. Now what happened is they had all of Phuket, where all those people are vacationing, all this information was coming in, and they were basically watching for things that were not cards that they didn't want and not phone calls. This was a very cleverly controlled computer that understood what the transmission signal of a credit card charge looked like, and then would copy the whole thing. And then what they would do is every single card that they wanted, they'd add $100 in charge to a casino, get the chips, and then cash the chips out. So then you come back from your vacation, you know, Mrs. Smith has come back to Long Island, and she gets the bill, and she goes to Mr. Smith and says, "What night did you spend $100 at the casino?" And he goes, "I didn't spend $100 at the casino. You must have spent $100 at the casino. Remember this?" She goes, "I didn't spend $100, I spent $20, and my $20 charge is here." So then it becomes a question, do Mr. and Mrs. Smith want to call anyone and fight about $100 that they had on vacation that neither of them are really sure if they spent it or not? It was a very clever gang, and they were doing it to 50, 60, 70, 80 cards a day. Right? That's a MIM. Now, let's say instead of wanting to intercept credit card charges, I wanted to change a vote. Well then, I just need to figure out, here's my voting machine out there, and my voting machine has got people who drive it to the county tabulators, but I'm going to erase this and now go to an architecture that's closer. Now that you understand the process of how it happens, let's talk about how voting tends to happen. So we've got all these voting machines out here. This is my polling place, and then the voting machines generally have a human being, not always, but a human being takes them apart and gets a bucket of memory cards, basically. These are my memory cards. And then they physically drive to the county tabulator, and there's basically a series of computers involved now. So at the county, I basically will have a thing that looks sort of like a printer, but it's got a slot. You stick the card in there. And then there's a reader screen, and then there's some kind of transmission computer, which is usually some old Dell computer or something sitting there. Sorry, Dell, if it's not a Dell computer. But it's whatever county computer they could get that's cheap that has the Windows CE system. So this is the first part of my network. And what they do is they put that in, and it reads the thing, and we look at the results, and then it adds it to the total tabulation. Then what happens is it transmits, again, through a local switch into a PBX, into an opto switch, through the optical switch up here, and then back out into a PBX, and back out into a another Dell computer that's at the Secretary of State's office. That's the final state tabulation. That's how it happens. Now the question becomes, where would you want the MIM? And back now we're going to go specifically October 2004, Ohio. What I have asserted, and if people think I'm wrong, great, we'll go to discovery. And as I've repeatedly said, if I'm wrong, in my job, I'm wrong 15, 20% of the time. Great, I was wrong. I didn't figure out where the thieves were. I admit it. We move on, we fix it. I'm right about 80% of the time, which is why a lot of companies hire me. What it looks like to me happened, and I said this, was that somebody had installed a kingpin, which was taking not just, and now we'll go ahead and change colors here, see if my red pen works today. They were taking a kingpin, and I suggested the kingpin had to be out there. Red's working okay today. So the kingpin, I thought, was probably sitting somewhere in the middle on the high-speed line. And the kingpin is a computer with a person sitting at it that doesn't just steal the information and then they use it later like we saw. It's a person who has on board their kingpin computer the code and instructions for the Secretary of State's office and the code and instructions for a county tabulator. Now, as I said, Most of these county tabulators, tons of them, are this extremely poorly designed architectures on relatively old software. It's very well established. There's tons. I mean, you guys can find lots of examples of people who've shown how to hack the code. But I'm not talking about the specific hack. I'm talking about the fact this guy has got copies of the code or has already introduced in these things routines that are communication routines to talk to his kingpin. So then what he does is he sits there, and instead of this happening, this happens. And in addition to that data flow going through there, the control information in red to go back to these can be driven as well. So now what happens is county tabulates everything up, is constantly talking back and forth saying, I've got 10% of my vote. And the kingpin says, wonderful, what's the total? Now, you think you're talking to the Secretary of State, but you're not. You're talking to the kingpin. And then you say, it's this, and the kingpin says, okay, great. And then it passes out to the Secretary of State. So the kingpin doesn't have to make itself seen. It can choose to pass everything through until it decides to say, now I've got a problem. You know, so at 9 o'clock in the evening, Kerry's leading in Ohio. And the kingpin is watching these results go through, and this operator is sitting here at a company called Smart Tech Solutions. We now know. And remember, when I speculated this, everyone said, that's ridiculous, that's completely impossible. Well, we now found out that not only was I right, we know where it was sent. We didn't just have it introduced, it was designed into the Secretary of State's office that they could switch the control from their computer talking to the counties to have a Smart Tech do it. So, great, I was right. So now everybody's saying, well, yeah, you were right, we're sending a Smart Tech, but they didn't do anything wrong. Well, then why were you sending it to them? So these guys at Smart Tech, they're now looking at the things going by, and they finally make a decision. We need more Bush votes. So what they started doing was, in counties where they already knew that there was a Republican county coordinator, they already knew they were going to win the county, they started padding the vote to cover the differences in the place that had been too dangerous, and they would have gotten caught had they done it. So in these places, they were already heavily Republican. They'd probably looked and said, okay, votes have come in from this precinct, and we'll take away 50 Kerry votes and add 50 to Bush, and then send it on. And then what's great is we'll then send back to the tabulator and change the tabulator level too, which is very simple to do. If you've ever called up the customer service help desk and all of a sudden watched them changing something inside your computer, you'll go, oh my gosh, how are they doing that? Well, it's because they have the ability to do it if you have the code of what's at both ends, which we know the guys at Smart Tech had. On average, when you swipe your card in the United States, 36 computers are involved in the process for one credit card swipe. So when people ask me what I do, so I've had some people recently going, you're just so obsessed with voting. I go, no, actually, I just spend a few hours a month on voting, really. Generally, every 2 years in November, for thousands of qualified, highly driven, and very good professionals like myself trying really hard to allow your credit card to work. And most days, we win. And occasionally, now, let's go even to the next step, right? So now let's take what we do to stop a thief. So if we're trying to stop a thief, so I've made my credit card charge here, and now my credit card charge is traveling through the system, going through 36 computers. That goes very fast here because it's the speed of light. Then we're back into copper here. Now let's all of a sudden, this computer that asks, are you real? Then says, huh. And the computer equivalent of huh would be, it asks you're real, go, well, that's a real account, but Bob Smith's never been to the Walmart in Oklahoma before. So the huh of the computer then triggers a whole other bunch of computers. And these computers are what I spend most of my time designing. And these are fraud. A few months before that, we blew out a group that had compromised cash registers. We've blown out employees who are copying this data. We've blown out people who are working at the bank who added code to steal it there. It's like, There is no part of this system that we have not found thieves stealing or changing data. None. And it amounts to millions of dollars a day that we lose. Now, all around the world, there are predict how to steal the election and then laugh about I'm usually right. This is what I spend my time doing. Because all of these things in between, every single step in this process, I have found thieves in. Every single one. In Phuket, Thailand, we blew out engineers who had an optical switch who were duplicating things. Just last month, we blew out a gang who had put extra circuit boards inside of this to steal them right at a bunch of stores in Belgium and London.